Hello and welcome to today's content where we're talking about Jayden Rundall since he has been released and it is time to do his unit review and analysis. And yeah, without further ado, let's begin. Here we are for abilities for Jayden. As his main job is going to be King of the Stags. As a base unit, he's going to get Unerring Shot, which is 100% hit chance, very good. Sniper Stance, Magi Blast, March of the Stag, Drill Shot, and then his limit break is going to be Rotary Magi Cannon, which is going to hit 3 times as well as break the magic barrier before hitting. So that's pretty good. For his EX upgrades, he has Sniper Stance Plus, which is going to make Sniper Stance, now the buffs will be there for 4 turns instead of only 3. From here, Magi Blast Plus is going to increase the range tile out by 1, which is pretty significant considering that it is literally increasing the range, so that's pretty nice too. And his EX ability is going to be Golden Magi Shot. As you can see, it's going to lower the CT as well as do a good amount of damage for a single target. What is it? 200% modifier is very nice to have. For his sub job, this is the only other place where he has chaining capabilities, which is going to be Dual Magi Shot from his King of the Stags sub job, and he also gets Paralyzing Shot, which is going to be a little bit weaker in terms of just damage overall compared to like Drill Shot or Golden Magi Shot. However, it does have a chance for paralysis, which is pretty nice if it does hit. He also has the Black Mage sub job, which most importantly in my opinion is going to be Drain and Flare, just in terms of like flexibility of magic usage as well as the damage or sustain output. And then lastly is going to be Red Mage, which most importantly in my opinion is going to be Cura and Jamming Thrust. That means if he does have a free turn to use, if the AI allows, he can use Cura to heal your team, as well as he does have the magic capability of using Jamming Thrust for very high damage in that regard. Now here we are at resistances and passes. For his resistances to damage types, 0% to slash, -5% to pierce, -5% to strike, 20% to missile, and 10% to magic. This is before his master ability, by the way. So as you can see overall, he has nothing too weak, but his missile resistance is very strong. As a unit, he has 0 AoE, 0 single target resistances. His level 120 master ability included, he has 0 defense and 0 spirit. His resistances to statuses is so I don't want to be biased, but this is very not that great. But 50% to Toad and Poison, which you will almost never see in PvP specifically, and 10% to Slow, which is not even a high amount unfortunately, however it is better than nothing. His master ability however is going to be the Mono Light element, and then he has 10% more missile resistance added on. This means his base amount is going to be 30%. Like once you get his master ability, which is very high, and he has an AP consumption decreased by 20% for himself. I will say while that passive is very nice to have, his abilities were kind of, how should I say, designed to already have high AP costs, and they just slapped the AP cost reduction on him just to make sure it quote unquote balances, so it's really kind of weird. Anyways, from here, he is a 3 move 1 jump unit, 100 cost. For his passives, what I would highly recommend is going to be Ruler's Refinement, which is going to be his agility passive as well as his spirit penetration, and Farsight for range +2 for himself. Niche and Flex is going to be Magic Up, Initial AP Up, and Mage's Protection. The reason why I recommend Farsight over Magic Up is because not only is his base magic percentage, like his base magic, very low, that means he doesn't get as much from the magic percentage. Additionally, he can't really take hits, so you really want to make use of his range, which is going to be Farsight. And because he is a gunner, not a hunter, his range tiles needs to be a little bit more quote-unquote flat, or he needs to be more above. So just keep that in mind, like for like range attacks and stuff. Like he will make very good usage out of the range if he does use it. Obviously, Magic Up, especially on shorter maps, will be much more useful, but yeah, that's just how I would recommend a base setup to be. For his reaction abilities, he has Riptos Trigger, Magic Counter, and Magic Reflex. I will say Riptos Trigger is not bad because it does fire back Magic Missile, even though it's not elemented. It's also a 30% base chance to all damage, so that's not bad. However, if he is going to take a hit at all and he does not die instantly because he is squishy with no real good survival options, I would rather recommend Magic Reflex, because if like, especially if you're going against like Helena and she's maybe somehow survives against Jayden and he Magic Reflexes, then you've literally essentially won that fight in that situation. But yeah, that's just an example. It could like work in other ways and forms. Now here we are at Jayden's rating out of 5. So if you do not have a good light setup and you just want him as a unit, just in general, he's not going to be doing any fancy shows or being like a hard carry. I have to put him at a 3.5 out of 5. However, and a big however, If you do have Elena and or you have a very good light setup, he is very capable of being a very good unit at 4.5 out of 5. He will not necessarily be one-shotting units, but not only will he be poking them from very far away, he will deal substantial or enough damage so that the next instance of a like decent DPS or higher tier can finish the job after he pokes. So it is necessary up for setup, and the reason why I have these ranges specifically is because of light element. Light element is literally, I don't know why I'm explaining this in Jayden's video specifically, but light element is in a really awkward place where they're very good against everything if you have a specific build for it. However, they also are not good at everything because you have to build a specific thing for it. So yeah, it's a little bit wishy-washy, but that is how it is. If you know what you're hitting and you have a good setup, it will work with a Jayden. However, because Jayden is a little bit more one-dimensional in what he is able to do, if you do not have a good setup and or have him not being necessarily used properly, he will be much like lackluster. And I do have other like examples and other things I want to say, but I'll save that for by the next episode of Playing by the Book for the light team that is going to be probably used the most. Anyways, from here, the pros of Jayden. First off, he's able to become a very high penetrate DPS, and what I mean by very high penetrate is that his raw damage isn't going to be insane out of this world like Helena. However, he has very hard mitigation, like he is very hard to mitigate damage against. He has high missile attack penetration, and he has very high agility as well. He has a decent HP, he has decent magic, and he has very fast agility. And he even has agility passive to go even faster. So also, he has 100% hit ability. It doesn't hit very hard, however, it is super AP cheap to use, and it has very long reach. So he can poke down evasion units while they're still trying to get to him. He has access to multiple attack types. As you saw, it was missile and magic. However, missile will be by far his strongest unless you have like a lot of magic attack up abilities and he uses jamming thrust. Outside of that, his missile will be his best like bet in general. He's able to use the new raid cloth armor, which is the diamond coat. I'm not gonna say it's made specifically for him, but he benefits insanely well off it because of the AP acquired up as well as missile resistance penetration bonuses. He has a magic barrier break, limit break, that also hits 3 times, so you can chain off of it instantly. So it can deal significant damage onto any unit and like properly set up a chain. So that's why, like I said, light setup very important here. He has very high base missile resistance, which allows a lot of generic missile matchups to be very favorable for him. For example, one unit I will say that he might struggle against in terms of mitigating damage would be like Lara Croft, only because she has very good amount of missile resistance penetration. However, if she does not penetrate it, then he does have very good resistance against it. Magi Blast lowers the enemy's attack percentage, which means this is very effective against attack or physical damage based opponents in general. He has access to jamming thrust for the red mage subjob. I don't have to say much more than that because we all know jamming thrust is actually pretty strong, especially if you used Garble before and you've been hit by like a 5 or 6k jamming thrust onto your tank. You're probably thinking like, what just happened? What just hit me? But yeah, he does have access to it and he's light element in that regard. Also, because he has the red mage subjob, he also has access to magic reflex, which can be very strong in the right situation. So just be mindful of it. He has very strong single target abilities with alright AoE abilities, and I say alright because he does not have any like huge amazing AoE like Helena or like Ruin Stern. He doesn't have super high modifiers like it. However, as I said before, he is very hard to mitigate damage from, and because he's mostly used for a single target DPS, he's not necessarily has to have AoE in that regard. Also, his auto attack is magic based missile just like his abilities, so it is a little bit more unique, kind of like Garvel is with his, and like Sweetheart Salir, stuff like that. His is unique in that regard. Now let's talk about the negatives of Jayden. So first off, he has low base spirit and defense. We know it's literally 0. He has no good survivability options besides working off his resistances, which is mostly going to be only missile or his own TMR, and I will be talking about his TMR very soon. To constantly output DPS, he does have to have bells, or he needs multiple turns of AP generation from his TP abilities. Even with his AP consumption down passive, as I said before in his other master ability, he compensates that because he has high AP cost abilities already. So it's really kind of weird how Gumi set that up. It's like he doesn't really benefit from it if he was just made as a normal AP cost unit overall. But yeah, also I forgot to mention here, he does start with a lower base AP, well not base, but like lower starting AP, so he does need bells. I will say he needs bells or a lot of turns for at least 2 turns of buffs for a decent amount of AP to be used. Outside of his limit break, he has no barrier breaks and he has no multi-hit abilities outside of the dual shot from his sub job only. So this actually makes his chaining capabilities very low. However, if he does limit break a tank and then your other unit can finish it off, that still does its job. So while he doesn't have reliability in chaining, he still has access to it. He struggles to take out like high single target resistance units in general, or very high AP bulky units due to his raw DPS being lower. Even though he has high constant DPS that is hard to mitigate DPS, it doesn't necessarily mean you're ever going to see like a 10k damage out of him, because his raw damage is not going to be as high. Compared to like Helena, if you do not mitigate her damage, you can and will see 9 to 10k damages from her limit break, such as situations like that. Just keep in mind, it is harder to mitigate Jayden's damage. While it's easier to quote-unquote mitigate Helena's damage, she doesn't have as much penetration in that regard in comparison. And like I said, I'll be talking about it more in detail in Playing It by the Books next episode. Also, he does require a kind of a more hefty setup, Jayden does, compared to Helena, because he's not as flexible as his options. Not only is his luck stat low, his base amount is also very low for his luck. He doesn't have the same survivability options as well. Helena not only has anti-magic wall, she can use Helena's TMR. She can also go evasion or even go like a bruiser build because of what she is allowed to do in terms of what she can use for TMR and flexibility. She literally has so much to her tools in comparison for survivability. Jayden, however, is going to be your backline missile DPS, and he doesn't really like reach far out from that role. So you just have to keep that in mind like when you're using him. He's not going to be doing like some crazy things or like crazy survivability compared to a unit that is also 100 cost and like Helena. Additionally, his 100% hit ability is even weaker than Unavailable Pain's modifier, so he'll almost never one-shot an evasion unit. I will literally say that confidently. 99% of the time, he will not be one-shotting any like evasion unit. And I will say, I didn't add it here either, once Santa Claus comes out as well, not only do evasion units get insanely good evasion from that Santa Claus, they also get 10% light resistance. And you know what that means? Jayden does even less damage there. So just keep that in mind. Once Santa Claus is out, it's gonna like significantly nerf the damage output of Jayden can do to specifically evasion units in general. Also, he has no imperils or significant debuffs, so he will struggle very heavily against light elemental resistance, as I just spoke about earlier. I will say Magi Blast attack percentage down is very nice. It does not affect any magic users, as well as it's not a big enough debuff as like such as like maybe agility down or like reaction ability down, or like there are other things he could have gotten, but they really just gave him mostly just damage or just raw like abilities, which is why I'm not really too satisfied with his like entire kit. Also, he's vulnerable to disable, stop, and paralysis, and I put maybe silence because it does say on WOTV Calc that his abilities can be reflected by magic reflect, like because they're magic based damage. However, we do know that cast times or magic abilities in general, if you are silenced, you cannot cast/use them. I don't know specifically because he is a little bit more unique of a character because of missile, if silence affects him. Because I don't have him right now as of this like review, if he is affected by silence, this is extremely huge because then silence is very effective against him. However, because maybe he is more considered a gun user instead of like traditional magic, maybe he isn't affected by silence, which would be very nice. So we'd have to see and test overall. Anyways, silence could be very effective against him, or it could be useless against him in general. Also, due to being only 3 move and 1 jump with no mobility options, certain height terrain maps could make it very difficult for him getting clear shot. That's why I wanted to use Farsight as his recommended passive abilities, because he is a gunner. He is not a sniper or a ranger. He doesn't have those abilities, so he cannot just shoot from where he really wants. He has to be in more line end for position, just in general. Also, lastly, while he's able to deal significant damage to a lot of dark units, because it's very hard to mitigate damage from him, and he's a light unit against dark, you do have to keep in mind that Dwayne and Helena, if they do survive his hit and hit him back in return, he will be one-shot 9 times out of 10 because he is very, very squishy, and they do insanely high damage, and he has very poor mitigation options. So keep that in mind. He does need either a tank or a frontline to kind of absorb damage for him, because he does not have that survivability or like accessibility to survive getting chip damaged upon. Now, that's why overall I think Jayden is a 3.5 out of 5 as a 100 cost unit. Overall, I do think he's better than the like average of units. However, as a 100 cost unit, I do think he's a 3.5 out of 5 unless you have a really good light setup, which I will be showing my example for such, which he could be very good, like a 4.5 out of 5. From here, his TMR is going to be the Providence of the Stag. I do give it a 4 out of 5 TMR rating, mostly because it's kind of unique. The stats on it themselves, like 302 HP, 7 Spirit, 12 Accuracy, 9 in crit rate, just so-so, but the effect itself is, in my opinion, very surprising / useful. What I mean by that is that it essentially gives you like a barrier that can take 2500 HP and increases missile attack, which I'm not too keen on the missile attack. As you can see, only missile users can use it in general. But here is the thing I want to know, and I don't know because I'm unable to confirm it right now, if this counts as a barrier and can it be broken by a barrier break, or do you have to deal the amount of damage? Because 2500 HP as a shield is actually pretty good just in general. Like if you took like maybe 7,000 damage and then you had this barrier on, that would essentially turn it into 4,500 damage. However, if you had a similar like 35% barrier and they did 7,000 damage, that would be almost the same amount of damage you would be taking overall in the end. However, barriers usually either have 3 times or 3 turns. Specifically for this one, this barrier does not really it doesn't expire, and I don't know if it can be broken. If it cannot be broken, then it is very rightfully so a 4 out of 5 for all gunners that can use it. However, if you can break the barrier, and like if you can break the barrier, I do see like the TMR chase rating being much more lower, but until we know what it is, I'm not 100% certain on it, but it is something to be like considerate of. And yeah, overall that is my Jayden rating out of 5, and because he is above the 3 out of 5 threshold, we do have an example set up for him. So here is my example setup for Jayden and what I will be probably using, maybe depending on the map situation. However, Elena is going to be using the Bahamut Vision card, not only to boost her attack and her agility very high, also to give the entire party magic percentage. From here, Warrior Light is going to be using Scions of the Shadow, not only to increase light attack up as a modifier very high for the team, but also dark resistance to not only help himself tank, but also the other units to kind of have a better chance of surviving, because Bahamut also gives single target resistance. From here, Jayden, before I talk about his equipment, his vision card is going to be the Great Stag, mostly because it's going to give AoE resistance, which is going to combine well with the Bahamut resistance as well. So they have all 20% single target and AoE resistance before anything else to consider. So that is pretty nice to have. From here, he's going to be using the Bahamut Esper, not only for the amount of damage, but also to get a little bit more magic percentage. Because while Carbuncle does have more modifiers, like light attack up, all that, he really needs to improve his magic stat as well, just in general. And because he gets missile attack already from his weapon, the Quasar, I believe, the magic percentage, just raw stat in general, will be very helpful for him overall. From here, I would use the Diamond Coat once you are finished with the raid. Not only, it's just very good on him in general, and Bells, because like I said, if you do not want him to like finish using his abilities very quickly, you will need either AP generation or Bells. And because the other 2 units I have posted here either have good starting AP or are just a tank, they don't necessarily need Bells. So this type of like formation is very good. I will say I might consider switching out specifically Warrior Light for Yuna in the future, depending on the setup or like map. It really depends, because like I said, you can make Elena a very, very difficult unit to kill, and in this situation I would make Elena the kind of like the front line, where she has evasion, where she also has her immortal spirit, and she gets re-raised from Yuna. So this will necessarily take 3+ hits to take her out, while Yuna can either keep her alive, attack, and Jayden also poking from the back. So yeah, it's just some stuff to consider. It's an example setup for Jayden. Some future stuff to consider. FF14 Endwalker, since the expansion is coming soon, and JP side of things did confirm that Well, Gumi confirmed that there will be a FF14 Endwalker collaboration. We do not know when, if it's gonna be, if it's literally like around the same time the game releases, the MMORPG, or if we'll be getting it at a later time. This does mean that Thancred and Scions of Shadow will come back. They also confirmed that Thancred's Master Ability 2 will be getting reworked, so he's more in tune with other 100 cost units, as well as, I mean, let's be honest, he is kind of like, he's like a Walmart or a budget version of a 100 cost unit. He doesn't even have a limit break. Like, come on, Gumi, like, what are you doing? But also, since he will be getting his EX soon, if Final Fantasy XIV does return, it is possible Thancred might be decently viable. We don't know, but it is something to consider because it's just future stuff. Outside of that, we do know that Lucio in the beginning was very weak. From JP side of things, he is a light unit. However, as his EX upgrades have been increasing during his story, as his story progresses, it could be possible that he is going to be one of the strongest light units in the game. We don't know yet on his full potential because they keep adding more buffs to him during his story. So we'll literally have to see what happens in the end. And lastly, dark/high raw DPS or single target resistance is going to be very effective against Jayden in terms of either damage or mitigation. Helena is still very strong. If Jayden is not killing Helena and Helena touches him, you know what's going to happen. That is just how it works for the dark and light matchup. And specifically, Oberon here not only has good single target resistance, he also hits very hard. So considering this, that means he does have the combination of mitigation against Jayden specifically, as well as the high enough damage to kind of just one-shot Jayden. So keep that in mind. Overall, this is basically my entire setup for Jayden and my review. If you liked it, please leave a like and comment, and we've come to the end of the video. And as always, you know, if you're pulling for him, very good luck, and there's a lot more videos to go through. So yeah, until the next video, peace out.